Welcome to the Truth and Fertility podcast. So today's episode is part 2 of a conversation I have with my friend Kathryn, who is also a fertility care practitioner or Creighton method instructor. And we go through all of the misconceptions about natural family planning or fertility awareness-based methods today. Last week, we went all about just misconceptions of the pill. So really just this whole conversation are just bringing light or bringing truth to all of these common misconceptions that a lot of people have that we've heard so much of in our years of teaching. So definitely an interview you don't want to miss. If you have not listened to part 1 of our conversation yet, please do so. It's just last week. So just the episode right before this one. So I hope you enjoy today's conversation. Welcome to the Truth and Fertility podcast. My name is Haley and I am your host. I work at an OBGYN clinic where I teach women and couples how to chart their cycles so they can either achieve or avoid pregnancy and also to manage their fertility. I have a huge passion to teach women and couples about the beauty of their fertility and how the pill is never the answer to women's health. There's a lot of good and not so good information out there about fertility. And so my goal with this podcast is to help you sort out the truth from the weeds. I want to teach you how to chart your cycle and to reach your family planning goals while also maybe even possibly locating hormonal imbalances and to receive proper treatment. I want to help you get in the best hands that you can with the best doctors that you can to reach optimal reproductive health. So if you're ready to get on this journey with me to learn more about your reproductive system, how it was created and how it should be working, and the best medicine in order to make it work if it's not, then you are in the right place.
The one that I get the next most frequently, or the second most frequently, is that, well, if you're using NFP to postpone pregnancy, then you're automatically having to restrict or restrain yourself on days of fertility.
Yeah.
And again, I think that this is a little bit of that no mentality,
right,
versus, okay, but fertility is good and beautiful, and a woman is not, to go way back to the beginning, a woman is not constantly fertile. That is impossible. She's actually infertile for most of her cycle. So the key is to her being able to learn what those days are, and especially if her husband is able to come to those follow-ups with their practitioner, he's able to learn that too. And my favorite is when he does the charting for her. Oh my goodness.
I always start with that.
And they're so proud.
Yeah.
Those men are so proud of their wives and of their fiance. Like, as you said, we do it in marriage prep. Their bodies, their fertility, their cycles, and then they're so proud of getting it on the chart. And they're almost always accurate. Yeah. Many men have said to me, oh, it's just a coding system.
Yes.
And as soon as their brains adjust to that, then it's perfect.
It's the engineers.
Yep.
That I love when I have a couple where the man is an engineer because he's going to get it.
It works so well.
This is really funny. So it's not my client. It's a friend's clients that she's working with right now who are engaged and they're preparing for marriage. They're going through this course, and the future husband, he must be an engineer or some sort of software guy. And what he went so far as to, he wanted to make this as easy for his bride as he possibly could, which I just think is beautiful in and of itself.
Isn't it
like, just amazing. Like,
yes.
I just want to look at her and be like, you did good. You made a right choice. Like,
yes,
this is
exactly.
a good choice.
And she will feel so loved in that.
Oh, yes. I can't imagine her not. Yeah. So what he did was, I don't know if he created, I don't know if it was an actual app or if it was just some sort of software program that he created somehow. I don't know anything about that. So I don't know how he would have done that. But when she goes in to put her observation, she'll do it on her phone so that they have it, they can both access it, and then he'll actually write it on the paper chart. But she'll do it on her phone. So he just listed out questions of, so the first question when she goes to put it in her phone, the first question is, were you bleeding today? Yes or no? Then if she if she presses yes, then the next question will be, okay, what was your flow? And then if it was light or very light,
this is amazing.
Then the question will be, okay, did you have a mucus observation this day? And then it'll be, and then if she's not bleeding, then it'll go into it. So he just made this tree of questions, and she can follow that through. And I'm like, this is amazing. This is so, and I even told my friend who is the practitioner for these clients, I'm like, you need to tell him how much money he could make if he sold that.
Truly. Patent that.
Yes. So we're getting there. But that is so beautiful. It's awesome. So I noticed too that when I am working with couples where the husband, even if the husband can't come to the follow-ups, because there's work, there's reasons, valid reasons why they both can't be there. And I totally get that. But for the couples that are charting together, where the chart is on the husband's bedside table, like he is the one in charge of the chart, and they just have that 20-second conversation at the end of each day, like, hey babe, here's what I saw. Hey babe, great, write it down, bam, done. They have so much more, in my experience of teaching them, they just have so much more success with this. Better communication, and not just revolving around fertility, but communication takes practice, and this is a really good way to practice communication with your spouse, is by having these just really open, honest, and consistent conversations about your fertility. And so when I'm working with couples where the husband is truly involved, and I mean, maybe you're not going so far as to create an app for your wife if you're not able to do that, but at least taking over the charting, I think it's just so beautiful. It really, it's an act of love to your wife to do that. And
truly. And also a pursuit of knowing the other.
Right.
And yes, many men have said that they don't understand women, and
I don't understand myself sometimes.
I was just going to say, sometimes I don't understand women either. But this is a great way to learn more about women, and why are we moody one day and we're not the next? And why do we have headaches cyclically? And why is there insomnia in these days? And why do we have mood swings? Like all of these things that can just seem so erratic, especially for our dear men who don't have these ups and downs in their hormonal cycle, that they're able to understand that more. And women are able to understand themselves more. Yes. Which you will never get if you are on the pill. So you're actually really able to expand your interactions with one another and your ways of understanding one another. And there are a few things that are more beautiful than being known, seen, and loved. And this is a way that most couples don't have. But once they start charting, they now have this new avenue. And I know in Creighton, there's something that we share with them called the SPICE acronym. So we're helping them to expand knowledge of one another and intimacy in spiritual ways, physical ways, intellectual ways, communicative ways, and emotional ways. And I've had more than one couple come back to me and say, we just learned a whole new vocabulary that we did not know. Wow. And now I can say to my fiance or my spouse, oh, I really felt loved in this way, in a generous way. And that was not a conversation that they had ever had before. Wow. And which was, once I learned that from them, I've been able to share that story with other couples, and they have also found it relatable. Yeah. So if you're using the NFP to postpone pregnancy, is it going to be difficult at times? Absolutely. Yeah. But learning the virtues or the strengths, the character traits of generosity and self-control, and how can I love you today in a way that benefits you, are conversations that are more likely to happen if a couple is using NFP together. Yeah. Like the divorce rates for couples who use NFP are very, very small.
It's like 3 to 4%,
yes.
Isn't it? Yeah. Maybe even less.
So, somewhere right around there. I was going to say below 5.
Yeah.
Versus the average national, 50%?
Yeah.
45, 50%? Mm-hmm. So if you want a successful marriage, use NFP.
Yeah. Well, and actually, I was just telling you this story before we started recording, but I'm going to repeat it because it has so much to do with this. I was talking to yet another fertility care practitioner friend of mine who I work with, and I was chatting with her about how she teaches this concept to her clients. Mm-hmm. And it, like you mentioned, we call it SPICE, right? So spiritual, physical, intellectual, communicative, and emotional, all different types of intimacy that really help create this well-rounded intimacy within a marriage.
Like, remember, loving the whole person.
Loving the whole person. Yeah. And remember, physical is part of that. So
absolutely.
It's a huge part of that. But if that's the only intimacy that we have, okay, we're lacking in other areas. So anyways, I was talking to my friend and asking her, she's a lot more experienced than I am. So I was just asking her, how does she teach this well? And the way that she teaches this, and she teaches it based on her own experience too. So this is what she and her husband did together when they were first married, and they were first using the Creighton method, and they were trying to avoid pregnancy, which meant avoiding intercourse for about a week of every month during her fertile time of the cycle. They started noticing kind of just this growing resentment with each other, because it got to the point where they weren't even really spending time with each other during their fertile window, because mm-hmm. if they had to abstain, mm-hmm. it became easy to just be in separate rooms rather than be together. And they noticed that there was growing resentment. There was a lot of issues that were forming there, and they kind of had a come to Jesus moment where they're like, surely this can't be what the church or what the intention of this should, like, the fruit of this is really negative right now, and surely this is not what the church wants for our marriage. Like, we're using this to better our marriage, so mm-hmm. how can we use this better? Like, what can we do? So what she did, and what she teaches all of her clients to do, is she writes out SPICE, so letter by letter, and then underneath each letter she'll write 3 different kind of ticks or tallies, and she'll say, okay, go home and chat with your husband and come up with a list of 3 things for every single type of intimacy in SPICE that you can do that's specific to only doing during the times of abstinence. Mm-hmm. So it's not just like sitting on the couch and cuddling, because that's something that shouldn't, you should do that at all times, right? That's great. So don't make it generic. Make it something that's very intentional, that you only do during the times of abstinence, in order to increase those other areas of intimacy. And so just to give you the example that she gives, which is hilarious. She asked her husband one time when they were kind of going through this process, she asked him, okay, so his love language is physical touch. And so she asked him, what is a way that I can touch you that's more just affirming to you rather than arousing to you? And her husband is a man's man, like hunter-gatherer man's man. And he said, I really love pedicures.
That's great.
And so she, every month when they are abstinent, she gives him a pedicure. And she does not give him a pedicure any other time of the month other than when they are fertile. And that is the way that she gives. She
true
shows
love.
True love. True selfless love by giving her husband a monthly pedicure during that time. And I just think, like, that is beautiful. Like, that is intentional. Mm-hmm. That is very specific to mm-hmm. the fertile window, like when they are having to abstain.
Also specific to him.
Like, she went not only to thinking of herself, like, okay, what can I do? No, mm-hmm. she went to her husband. This is also communicative intimacy. She went to her husband and said, what can I do to love you during this time?
Right.
And he gave her his answer, and bam, it's great. He almost enjoys the time that they have to be abstinent. Now, the other thing that she did say, though, which was also hilarious, is that she said peak +4. So for people that are unfamiliar with what peak +4 is, that's the time. So you find your peak day, which is going to be the day around the time of ovulation. That's going to be around your peak fertility. And then when we add 4 more days to that, we always add 3 days of fertility past your peak day when we find that on your chart, because that really helps us encompass the time of that ovulation could have happened. So when you're 4 days past peak day, the evening of that 4th day is, we would consider that open for intercourse if you were trying to avoid pregnancy, because that you're confidently past ovulation, you're not going to ovulate again, so the remainder of that cycle is going to be infertile for you. So she says peak +4 is a holiday in her home. Like they do not plan anything else other than that one thing.
And because she's charting, she knows.
Exactly. And so it is a very intentional thing for them, which is amazing. And she said that this specifically, using NFP in their marriage, it has had a crazy increase in their communication, in their emotional intimacy, in their spiritual. They pray together more intentionally during this time. Their spiritual intimacy. I mean, all of those things. They're actually a marriage that I highly look up to, because they are so intentional with the things that they do, and it's because of NFP that they do it. So there you have it. Misconception, blasted.
I can only imagine how like the anticipation increases, like a mini honeymoon night.
Yeah,
every
exactly.
month.
Yep. Oh man. Okay.
That's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that, Haley. Yeah. So I think we've knocked down that it doesn't work, that it's restrictive. One that I have heard, I think especially at the beginning, we get these glazed over eyes when we first start teaching, like, this is so complicated and I will never ever understand it. And so to every single client, I say multiple times, don't worry, the first 2 months are going to be really hard. As far as there's this information that I have to learn, and then I have to remember to be checking my biomarkers, like looking in Creighton specifically, you're looking for mucus multiple times a day, and then getting it on the chart accurately. And how am I ever going to remember all of these details? But every single one, after 2 to 3 months, they learn it, and then they now know something for life. And I've had multiple clients. So first, that's a beautiful thing, that they're then in the sense of accomplishment. One of my favorite clients, and she's so proud to be one of my favorite clients. She's like, oh, I was always teacher's pet. So like, awesome. Well, it holds up in this case too. But her chart is a sight to behold. Oh, yeah. Because not only does she use the coding system of Creighton, but, and this here, how NFP or natural family planning, fertility awareness methods, fertility tracking, whatever word you want to use for this category of learning your body. She's someone who's prone to bacterial vaginosis. Okay. And multiple issues. But because she was charting, we were able to see when that occurred in her cycle. She was able to get a lot of different herbal help, and all of that is tracked on her chart. Okay. And it's glorious. And she has her own sub-coding system for all of these different things. Yeah. And I told her she should really frame her chart at some point, or maybe I'll ask for a copy to use it anonymously to teach my other clients, to show them not only can you do it, not only was she a little confused and overwhelmed at the beginning, but now she's charted for months and months. And because she's prone to this, she's now able to watch for the signs and catch it before she even maybe would otherwise notice it. Yeah. And I was able to use that example for one of my other clients. And she actually, 2 of my other clients currently that I'm working with, they were both able to find a lot of hope in that. And to see that something is wrong, or showing a quote unquote wrong on their chart because of a reason, because there's something that we need to help their bodies do. And so we're now making traction in those things, and we're seeing the reflection of increasing health on their charts. Yeah. And it's amazing. And And they're feeling a sense of accomplishment and pride in that too.
Yeah.
And so what felt complicated and too detailed is now serving them.
Yeah.
On the flip side, and once they've made that transition, you know, through the difficulties,
through the hard, yes,
of all these numbers and letters that just don't seem to make sense.
Right. And I actually find I have a very similar experience with clients where it's like the first 2 months that are the first time that I'm sitting down with somebody and I'm giving them that introductory session where I tell them in the beginning, I'm like, buckle up.
Yep.
I'm about to give you a fire hose of information. Yes. I actually tell them, don't take notes. I don't even want you to write anything down. I want you to just sit and receive what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. Know that I'm going to give you a booklet that has all of this information and more. So you have everything written down already.
Yes.
But it is a lot of information, especially if you're coming in at ground zero and you've never heard of this before, you've never learned any of this before. It is a lot of information. But I do find though that at like the 2-month mark where they've had 2 cycles of charting, it's like something clicks and it just starts to make sense. Mm-hmm. And then it's like smooth sailing from there. So it is kind of hard to get through the weeds at the very beginning, definitely. But once you get through that, it's like, oh my gosh. And then you're exactly what you said. You've learned something for life. Like you can't forget it now. Mm-hmm. Like you know this about yourself now. And it's beautiful. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And I have the privilege of being able to work with many women postpartum.
Yeah.
So they've used this method to postpone pregnancy. Then they used it to achieve pregnancy. Mm-hmm. And that's one of my other favorite things about fertility tracking is that conversely to birth control, which again is always a no, fertility tracking can easily be used one way or the other, or a couple can use it to postpone pregnancy or to achieve pregnancy. Mm-hmm. And so I've worked with women postpartum. Okay, we're postponing. Now we're achieving. Now she's pregnant. And now they're my clients again postpartum.
Yeah. Because
their body has gone through that major shift. But they know it. They just have to use a little refresher.
Yeah.
So we just, chat about their baby and we look at her chart and there's so much familiarity and pride in what they already know.
Yeah.
And they're able to see their own patterns so quickly too.
Yeah. And you learn so much about your own body as well too. And just seeing those patterns and recognizing, okay, here's what's going to come next, and just becoming so familiar with your own body and your own cycle in a way that you've never experienced before or never been familiar with before. I think it's really empowering for a lot of women too.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Men, and what we were saying earlier, in that it really helps men understand their wives a lot better too, which is a bonus. So yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Did you have any other misconceptions that you can think of? We covered a lot.
We did
cover a lot of the good big ones.
Yeah, I think we did. The only one that I feel like we piecemealed it into all of our conversation, but the only other one that I can really think of as one that I frequently encounter from both secular-based people and faith-based people is that NFP is a church-condoned form of birth control.
Ah, yeah.
And once we dive into that conversation further, there's really a realization, again, like you and I just talked about for the last several minutes, of, well, birth control is restrictive, a no, and a possible abortifacient, versus learning your cycle, which, and I always tell my clients, this is the hill I will die on, that all women should know how to chart their cycles.
Yes, agreed.
From the time they start their period until menopause. Then a couple could choose to use that information together to achieve or postpone pregnancy. And we are doing a disservice to women when they do not know their cycles, because especially if they think that, oh, NFP is birth control, therefore I will not learn it, because I'm not planning to use birth control, or I'm not planning to postpone pregnancy for any reason. And then they're year 2, 3, 4 into marriage, and they don't know why they're not pregnant.
Yeah.
I have had these clients, and my heart goes out to them so much, because they could have learned something so long ago, maybe prior, like in marriage prep, prior to marriage, and learn that, oh, actually my cycles are inconsistent, or I have X, Y, or Z issues, and they're then able to use the method to actually achieve pregnancy.
Or seek the medical help that they need.
Correct.
Right? With that newfound information on their chart.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And we talked about how there are windows of fertility, and if you're postponing pregnancy, you are avoiding intimacy at that time. That's not the same when you're on the pill. You are now in the driver's seat. You know what's happening. And you are choosing to love your spouse outside of just that physical intimacy. And that's, expanding you as a person. That's increasing your ability to love the other person, and to encourage your relationship to go beyond what it already is. And I think when that conversation happens, a lot of people find that really interesting. And they go back. I'm thinking of this one barista who said that to me. So just getting a coffee. Oh, isn't that Catholic birth control? I was like,
oh my gosh,
interesting that's how you know it. Like that's your immediate equation, is that NFP equals Catholic birth control. And I was like, well, actually no, but let's talk about it. And then I've had that same perception from Catholics or Christians as well.
For sure.
But it ends up being this great conversation about all of the, women's fertility and issues and all of those things. Which is pretty fabulous.
The greatest way that I've heard it described is, and this is not me, this was from somebody much smarter than me, and I just regurgitate what she said because I think it's brilliant, is that NFP, or again, there's so many words for it, right? Fertility awareness-based methods, fertility tracking. It actually cannot be contraceptive because of the definition of contraception.
Correct.
So if we're looking at the word contraception, if we kind of pick it apart, we see contra and ception. So we see contra meaning against, and then ception meaning conception. So against conception. So in order for something to be contraceptive, the possibility of conception has to be there, or the potential of conception has to be there in order to be against it. So to give an example, right? If you are having intercourse, that means that the potential for conception is there because of the natural consequence of intercourse. So that's where contraception comes in, where contraception is something that you do before, during, or after an act of intercourse to act against that possible conception. Well, okay, we're looking at NFP, and the way that a couple would use it if they're trying to avoid pregnancy, they don't have sex during the fertile window. And so if you're not even having intercourse, there's no possibility of conception. You're not even giving conception the potency. You're not giving it the potential to occur. So if something isn't there, if something doesn't have the potential of even being possible, then it's impossible to go against something that's not there, if that makes sense. You kind of have to put on a philosophical hat. But it just, when that was explained to me, it made so much sense that just by definition, by the etymology of the word contraception, NFP cannot be it. Because with NFP, you're not even giving the possibility of conception to occur, which means that you can't be against it. You can't do something to break it. You can't do something to prevent it, because you're not even allowing it to have potential to exist. Does that kind of check out? Make sense? Yeah.
Yes.
So that has been a really helpful way that I've described this to others, especially those in the church that are very concerned with using this to avoid pregnancy. And there's also that misconception of, if you're ever wanting to avoid pregnancy, well, then you're not going with God's plan, or you're not being open to life at that point. And that's where the kind of the sub misconception comes in, where when you are using NFP, you are always open to life, in that you are never, again, putting something intentionally against conception. There are going to be times, most likely, there are going to be times in every couple's marriage or in every life where it might not be prudent to have another child. A good example of this is if one of the spouses were to get cancer, and we both know, I'll say the name later, but we both know somebody actually whose husband had cancer, was undergoing chemo, and they said, the doctor told her, go on birth control because you cannot get pregnant while he is going through chemo. It would be very, very dangerous to conceive if you were to get pregnant with him on chemo. Also, too, the medicine of chemo actually does go through the sperm and can also affect her body as well.
That makes total sense. Yeah.
So with that, she's like, I'm not going to go on birth control. We're just going to be abstinent during this time. And that, to me, is a very heroic thing, because for them, it required a year of abstinence, and which is incredibly difficult. But and I'm taking it from her word, where she told me this story of just how much yes, it's difficult. I'm not going to say that it wasn't difficult, but during that time, they were able to work on those other types of intimacy. They were able to work on things in their marriage that they may not have had the opportunity to work on had this not been the case, right? Now, I'm not saying good, that's great that he got cancer, and I'm not saying that, right? But based on their circumstance, they were able to bring fruit from that circumstance. So there may be times in a couple's life where it is the more prudent thing to not get pregnant, to be responsible in your parenthood. And so with that being said, okay, what is a way that we can still be open to life, not saying that no, not having that closed off mentality with that the pill would offer, right? But rather never putting an intentional barrier there, like condom, for example, literally barrier method. It is called a barrier method because you are placing a barrier between you and your spouse. So, anywho, we could talk about this for forever, but that's another really good misconception that I know you and I both really like to bring to light to explain. Yeah.
It is. And I think last final point and kind of sub misconception with that, or maybe a valid question is, well, could you have a contraceptive mentality and still use NFP? And I think it's a little bit of a yes and no.
Yeah.
You could, definitely. But that's going then into, why are you doing it? How are you doing it? What is your motivation? Is it for valid and good, grave is often a word, or like strong, where you use the word prudent reasons, or is it because you had one child and that's all you want, and that was what you decided before you got married, and that's what you're going to do, for no further discernment or conversation after that. So then, is there a contraceptive mentality a little bit? And I use, quotes around that. Yes, because it's motivated by selfishness. But often, because NFP takes work and communication, as we've been discussing, and has this room for growth in understanding of oneself and of your spouse, the likelihood of that persisting over a length of time, especially if they're taking into account the children that they already have, each other, the health and well-being of their family, and if they're Christian, like the guidance of the Lord through prayer in that, I don't think that mentality will persist.
Yeah.
And in that case, then they're utilizing the rhythm that the Lord placed in the woman's body already. She didn't just come up with it one day. Like, oh,
yeah,
this is what I discovered.
Right.
Works. She's tapping into something that was already there from the time she was created.
Yes.
With her spouse.
That's a really good point too. That this is already something at her disposal. She just needs to tap into it, right? It's not, and not suppress it.
Correct.
Yeah. Oh man, it opens up it is such a new world, and it's you just start to grow a different mentality around family and around generosity and around selflessness. Like it really, and like absolutely, you'll hear of the couples that have 8, 9, 10 kids that have been using NFP, and some of them because they've used NFP loosely. But some of them because they've had this spirit of generosity, and they that's what they desired. That's the desire that the Lord placed on their heart, and that's beautiful. And they were able to achieve that because they knew when they were fertile, right? And then on the flip side, there are other couples that are deeply faithful couples that I know who have chosen to indefinitely postpone further pregnancy for multiple different reasons, and that's something that is a serious decision that needs to be done with your spouse and with the Lord, and and so there's not like a one size fits all either of this is an acceptable reason but this isn't, it
right.
is so based on individual couples and their circumstances and everything. And I know couples on either
and
ends.
the children they already have is a really important factor.
Yes, for sure. So yeah, I feel like we could talk forever about this, but we need to wrap this up. But this has been so incredibly good. I'm just really grateful for your time and talking about these things. And
it was fun.
Yeah.
You said, I could talk about this.
Oh, I know. Yeah. If we didn't come to a halt right now, I think we would talk for another few hours. But anywho, okay. Any last thoughts before we want to wrap up for tonight?
If you don't chart already, just start taking note of what you see every day in your body.
Yeah.
You're talking about the husband who made the app for his wife.
Right.
Just start noticing what days do I bleed? What does that look like? Why do I have when are the days that I have mucus discharge? When are the days that I'm dry? Yeah. And just start developing an awareness.
Yeah.
And then it doesn't have to be anything fancy. And I think just starting with that, you'll learn a lot about yourself.
Yeah.
It's my top takeaway tip.
Okay. That's great advice. Well, Kathryn, if somebody wanted to get a hold of you to chat more with you about all this stuff, how would they find you?
You can put my email in the description.
Okay.
And then also, I'll give you my Instagram as well. It's my personal Instagram because I don't have my business Instagram made. But eventually I hope to.
Okay.
And then...
Well, if we follow you on your personal Instagram, then maybe whenever you launch the business one,
it'll absolutely be on there.
Informed.
I'll be like, come follow me over here where all the nerdy things happen.
So I'll put your Instagram handle in the show notes as well so people can get a hold of you.
Okay, that sounds great.
Well, Kathryn, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time today.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Truth and Fertility podcast. If you are enjoying this content, it would be amazing if you could leave a 5-star review. That helps me tremendously to be able to continue to produce these episodes for you. Remember that these podcasts are available on Apple, Spotify, and Amazon, and YouTube. And you can always go to my website, truthandfertility.com, to learn more. Thanks again for listening, and I'll talk to you again next week.